Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our latest episode of the Brendan Burns podcast. Joining us today is Jordan Tripp. Now, Jordan is a former professional MLB baseball player, played for the Oakland A's, and he is now the CEO and founder of the 365 Sports Academy, investor and trainer. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Brendan.
My pleasure. I'm so excited for this episode. And I was wondering if we could just get started with you walking us through your background, kind of where you're from, and how baseball became a big part of your life.
Yeah, so I grew up in Orange County, California, kind of the baseball hotspot, if you will, kind of in the world. And I grew up, I had an older brother who's about 4.5 years older than me, and he was always playing baseball. Always active. And as a young kid growing up, I always looked up to my brother and kind of just followed him around everywhere he went. And, I went around playing with him and his buddies. I started getting really into baseball. I continued to play. Once I got into high school, I kind of shifted away from football and the other sports I was doing and really got heavily invested into baseball. I was fortunate enough to earn a scholarship to Cal State Fullerton. I then transferred to junior college, played 2 years there, did really well, and I was drafted 7th round by the Oakland A's in 2010. So it was awesome.
That's awesome. That's such a cool story. Now, at what point when you were going through this process did you realize that you had, because I guess there's a lot of people who play in high school and they're wondering, am I good enough to play in college? And then you get to college and it's like, am I good enough for the professional level? At both of those two steps, when did you realize that you could go to the next level to make that transition?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, it probably wasn't until that last year of college until I was like, okay, wow, I think I could be a pro prospect. The difficult thing about baseball is that it takes a long time to really transfer the skills and the techniques and the mechanics that you work on in practice to a game setting. And so again, for me, it really wasn't until that last year of college when I really started getting heavily scouted that I was like, okay, I think I could be a pro prospect here. It really took that long. I did well in high school. My senior year, I did really well. 500 in league and all these awards and accolades, but I wasn't a professional prospect at that time.
Got it. Yeah, that's so interesting. And what did you see, I guess, in terms of when you were playing in college? Were there any habits or techniques? Like, how much of it, for example, was like just pure skill that you were born with versus things that you did in the clubhouse and the gym on your own to get to the next level?
Right. Yeah. So the summer before my senior year of high school is kind of when I really took my skills to the next level, when I noticed a huge jump in how well I was doing in the game. And what I did that summer was I got on a specific training program. So my brother, Brandon, he started his professional career that same time. So when I was a junior, going to be a senior, he was drafted by the Baltimore Orioles. I took his training program and implemented it all summer. And that's when I really took off. And so for me, that was the biggest thing. It was a diet program, it was a training program, and it was a baseball specific program. And then it was just being consistent with it and being disciplined enough to miss hanging out with friends or miss going on vacations to work on being a better athlete and doing games and doing practices and putting in all that extra work.
Got it. Yeah. So sounds like a very fortunate situation where you were able to inherit this really solid program, but you also had the discipline, and discipline is something that I've been studying a lot lately just in my own life, because I found that whether it's with my career, with Wall Street, with anything that I've tried to get out and accomplish, you have to have a program or a strategy. But I can go to someone and say, here's Jordan Tripp's the best baseball training program in the world, and they could be very skilled and but if they don't have either that hunger or that discipline. So do you think that discipline that you had was genetic, something you're born with? Do you think discipline can be taught? Because obviously you're now training a lot of people, and do you teach that as well?
Yeah, I think, for me, I think discipline is one of the biggest things. Like I tell my remote athletes and clients that I train, I can write up the best program for you. I can write up the best diet program. But if you don't have the discipline to stick to it, then, you're going to be taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And for me, it took a long time for me to, um, kind of get in the habit. And it's almost just like developing a routine. Everyone that I talk to, all my friends and family, they're like, oh, I don't know how you do this every day. I don't know how you're going here, you're going there. But for me, it comes natural because I've done it for so long. I'm on a strict schedule. I'm on a routine. I go here, I go there, I do this, I do that. It's all set and it's easy. But it did take time for me to get there for sure. And I think it can be taught, just kind of like anything, you need a mentor of this to kind of guide you on how to stay disciplined with the program and strategically schedule everything.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's so true. And so you said you were playing in college around senior year. You kind of started to get prospected. You thought you could make it to the next level. Drafted by the Oakland A's. Then
Yep.
what happened?
Yep. So my sophomore year of college, when I was 20 years old, what was when I really took off. I was drafted by the Oakland A's, 7th round, 2010. I signed with them probably about a month later, and then I took off to their spring training facility over in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Played that year. I played that year, and then I think I think it was the last game of that season. I got hit on the wrist or the hand by a fastball, and when I went home to California, I was still having issues, so I got X-ray, I got it checked out, and unfortunately, I needed a minor surgery to kind of clean things up. So, yeah, that was the first experience in pro ball. Welcome.
Yeah, don't crowd the plate.
Yeah, seriously. High and in. Jeez. So,
So, okay, so that happened. And then what was recovery like, and where'd you go from there?
yeah, so the recovery on that was actually pretty easy. I mean, I did miss a little bit of time. I had a little bit of soreness and tightness after, but it was a really minor procedure. So I went back to spring training of 2011, so my first full spring training,
Hmm.
and that went really well. I stayed, and then I stayed back at their facility, and I trained up until June when I went to their short season Vermont Lake Monsters. So that was cool to kind of experience that area, and I traveled all around like Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, kind of the Northeast, playing against other clubs.
Hmm. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And one thing that we were talking about offline before this was I was kind of sharing from my experience, like, as a coach, I've worked with athletes in the past, and a lot of them share with me so many interesting stories about kind of what it's like being behind the scenes as a
Yep.
professional athlete. It's not all like, oh, I'm Aaron Rodgers. Here's my $20 million paycheck every year. And
Right.
you're going to shoot these commercials with Peyton Manning about Oreos and make another 20 million. There's a
Yep.
lot of there's a lot more people behind the scenes, a lot of
Yep.
different levels. And I was just curious, like, what were the biggest things that you were surprised with, either good or bad, just kind of behind the scenes, behind all the glamour of, the starting shortstop on the Yankees? Like, what's kind of behind the scenes in the pro baseball world?
Yeah. So I'll give you one of the biggest things that surprised me, and it was actually with Manny Ramirez. So when I was, I think it was my second year of pro ball, Manny Ramirez had just signed with the Oakland A's. I think he was serving a suspension. So he was at our spring training facility. And at that same time, I was trying to avoid my second and my third surgeries. So I was there with him. And I was always the first guy at the facility. I think it was around 6 a.m. I'd get there. Once Manny arrived, I would get there at 6 a.m. And it was crazy. The first day that he was there, I walk up and I'm like, who's in the cage right now? Like, what's going on? This is weird. Someone's in the cage hitting. And I walk in the clubhouse and I ask what's going on. And it was Manny Ramirez with like one of his, personal assistants or someone in the cage hitting at 6 a.m. So that was one of the biggest things that surprised me. I mean, one of the greatest hitters, in the game, at that time. And there's been some stuff about him like, oh, he doesn't work hard, oh, he's lazy in the outfield, this and that. And while that may be true, the guy works his tail off behind the scenes. So that was something that was really surprising for me. I mean, not really surprising. I figured he worked hard, but to actually see it,
Mhm.
yeah, was big for me.
Wow. Yeah, you'd think someone after all those years on the Red Sox and really
Yeah,
having proven himself in so many ways, what would he be doing at 6 a.m. there? That's
right.
amazing.
Right. I mean, and the guy, I mean, he's made, I don't know, 80, 100 million, on the
Yeah.
tail end of his career, has all these home runs in the big leagues, established big leaguer. And yeah, he's in the cage 6 a.m. It's just, yeah, it was mind blowing to me, really, just
Wow.
because of who he was and what he had already accomplished. So,
Wow. So if you were coaching someone who was like a professional level prospect and they were in the cage at 6 a.m., they were doing all the right things. Like how do you get an edge in 2018 to be a pro athlete when there's all this science behind nutrition and everyone's working hard and I feel like it's probably more competitive than ever.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, again, for me, that kind of just goes back to discipline. Who wants it more? Do you want it more, or does some guy in Florida want it more? So,
Right.
again, do you have the discipline to stick to the diet, to stick to a training program, to tell your friends, hey, I can't hang out tonight. I have a big workout tomorrow morning, or hey, I got to train, today and tomorrow. Sorry, I can't make it. That's really what is going to continue to separate guys. Because I mean, I've played with and against guys growing up that were never the best players, that continued to grind and continued to work hard and surpassed guys that were better than them at the time, and went on to do bigger and better things than those guys did. So that's really the biggest thing for me in 2018. There's so much competition out there. There's so many different things that guys can be doing. But it's just doing that every single day and staying consistent with it, because this game, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, no, it's so funny you say that because I played in high school. I played football and I also played tennis. And there was one guy who was an unbelievable tennis prodigy and for sure was like pro level quality. And he left our high school to go train in Florida for a while, but apparently he got overweight and he started smoking. And there was always the number two guy in our high school who was talented, but nowhere near the first guy, Alex's level. And
Right.
then Alex moved back to our high school and just assumed he was going to be playing first singles, be the captain of the team. And the second guy, Sammy, had been hitting balls at 6 a.m. every day with his dad for multiple
Wow.
hours every day for 5 years. And Sammy would just smoke this kid. He went on to play at UNC Greensboro, had a whole
Wow.
career. And it was just to your point about, it's not always natural talent, it's the discipline.
No, for sure. Yeah, I mean, and there's so many different things that kids can be getting involved with today. It's crazy, and especially with social media, all the stuff that goes on there. So, I think, what I tell a lot of my guys and what I kind of preach is tunnel vision, is blocking out all that extra BS and staying focused on what your long-term goals are. There's always going to be someone. I mean, dude, so many times guys would ask me like, hey, like, you want to smoke, or hey, do you want to this? It's like, no. And I don't care what you think of me.
Yeah.
That's not who I am. And that's not part of my long-term goals. So I think that outside pressure is always going to be there.
Mhm.
And I think especially with today, it's tough to avoid it. But again, if you stay disciplined and grew up the right way, you'll be fine.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I want to ask you a question that came to my mind as I was thinking about Andre Agassi.
Yep.
I mentioned tennis, and I started remembering that I read his autobiography called Open last year. And it was an interesting, but also controversial read because he had struggled with drugs a little bit, and he had a
Right.
very domineering, pressuring father from Iran who really pressured him to just play. And it turned out that Andre was kind of pushed into tennis and didn't really enjoy it. And
Right.
I'm curious if you've seen that at all in your experiences, either as a player or now as a trainer. And do you have any messaging to the parents out there of how to, really motivate and be that father or mother figure and help your children, but not push them too hard where it's like they don't want to be doing this kind of thing? I'm just curious if you've seen that at all.
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen that. And one thing I recommend to parents is to, almost like give their son like an option, and not get upset at them if they don't want to do it. you
Right.
know like, encourage them to work hard, encourage them to do those different things, encourage them to go do some extra training. But don't get upset about it, because you don't want your son to almost start looking at you like, oh, like they're asking me again to like work out, like, oh, they're asking me again. You want to be that constant support system. You don't want to be looked at as someone who's pushing them too much. What I tell my athletes' parents is, you need to, um, constantly be positive with them, especially in baseball, because this game is built around failure. If you fail 70% of the time, you're one of the greatest players in your league,
Yeah.
and certainly in Major League Baseball. So, and just to understand that this game is built around failure, and to understand that it's a process, and don't get upset if they fail. Don't get upset if, one day they don't want to do a training. Just stay positive with them and encourage them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because it kind of ties into the mental aspect of the game. I feel like baseball and golf as well are very mental sports.
Oh yeah.
And I want to ask you, I have an outline of questions, but I'm going off on tangents here. I hope that's
No,
okay.
that's fine. No, absolutely. Bring it.
So a question I have for you, you're a trainer, you know all the fundamentals of the game and baseball and discipline. But what if someone came to you who maybe was a very talented player, professional level or whatever, and they say, Jordan, look, I know how to play this game. I've demonstrated success at a high level, but I'm in a slump right now. How would you coach? How did you coach yourself out of slumps if you were ever in them? And how would you coach someone out of a slump? Because that's probably more of a mental than a technical problem.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a great question. That's something that I dealt with in pro ball. That's something that everyone deals with in pro ball. For me, I would almost like trick myself, because once you start getting in a slump, all these things start going in your mind. You're like, oh, I suck. Oh, this, like, oh, that I can't see the ball. Oh, I suck. I'm the worst player.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just, I would just trick myself. So I'd say, you're the best player. You're the best hitter. This pitcher sucks. I'm way better than him. His fastball sucks. It's slow. Even if the baseball at the time looked like a golf ball.
Yeah.
So a lot of that was just tricking myself, and trying to stay positive. But again, that's one of the toughest things about the game is staying positive when you're terrible. And in baseball, you're gonna be terrible at times. So it's do you have that mental strength, mental toughness, and mental cues to say, hey, it's okay. This is part of the game. I'm the best player. I'm going to get a hit. I'm going to hit the ball hard. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to battle. I'm going to grind. Just all kinds of like those positive things.
Yeah.
Positive reinforcement, in short.
Totally. That sounds so helpful really in any area of your life. And I like what you said also, just going back to that, how the guy who fails 65 or 70% of the time is one of the best hitters in his league.
Yep.
And it's like not being that perfectionist. Like you go out to bat, it's like you have to get a hit every time because
right.
It's also
right.
not reasonable.
Well, it's tough. And one thing that I tell, my athletes is don't try to get a hit. Try to have a quality at bat. Try to hit the ball as hard as you can. Hits will come. And kind of going back to my pro career,
Right.
The best I ever was as a professional athlete, I wasn't even trying to get hits. I was simply just trying to have a good at bat, get a good pitch to hit, and hit the ball hard. That's all I was trying to do. And from a mental standpoint, it kind of kept me sane, because I wouldn't get upset if I had a bad at bat or if I didn't get a hit, because that wasn't my goal. My goal was just, to hit the ball hard. If it happened, great. If not, there's another at bat. So,
Yeah.
but again, that really takes time. It takes time to develop that.
Yeah, for sure. Wanted to also ask you something that just kind of popped into my mind is film and the importance of studying film, game film. I actually just watched this movie about football called Any Given Sunday. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah. That's a great one. Is that with Jamie Foxx?
Jamie Foxx plays like the up and coming third string quarterback who takes over. He's kind of like the arrogant guy who has two good games. He's Joe Montana. And then you have Dennis Quaid, who plays like the longtime Dan Marino-ish type quarterback, who's in the house watching film. And I've also watched a bunch of documentaries like the ESPN 30 for 30s. And you see, like we were talking about earlier, the power of kind of the behind the scenes.
Right.
And I was curious, like in baseball specifically, I remember reading an interview about Curt Schilling, pitcher, and he was talking about how he goes into film. He does so much more film research on himself and watching the mechanics of as a pitcher especially. But I'm curious, what was your experience like with film? And just when you look at people at a high level, how important is film in just, having a successful career?
Yeah, I think it's important just to pick up kind of tendencies. You can see certain things that are happening during certain at bats, and also you may have an unsuccessful at bat because you think you, I don't know, dropped your back shoulder, when in fact, it could have been a bad pitch, which caused, your back shoulder to drop. And that's huge for going forward, because it's a completely different adjustment.
Right.
One of them is, oh, it's just a mechanical flaw, my back shoulder drop, when really it was about your pitch selection. So
Mhm.
in baseball, I think there's a lot of that. That's huge, because there's just so many different things that can go wrong in a swing. And if you don't know what the issue was, and you make the incorrect adjustment, it's not going to help you going forward. So, and that's one of the biggest things for me. And that's probably something that's difficult at an amateur level to identify. And that's why I require, or not require, I really like it when my parents film and then send it to me,
Yeah.
because they could say, oh gosh, Johnny, he's grounding out every time, like, oh this, oh that, when maybe he's taking a great swing on a great pitch and he's just a little on top of it.
Right.
Or maybe he took a great swing on a great pitch and he was just a little early on it and fouled it off.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different things that can go wrong in a swing. So yeah, video analysis for me is huge. And it wasn't as big or as publicized back when I played, but I think more and more today it's getting a lot of notoriety.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. And I wanted to just also ask you about health and wellness. Like we talked about diet earlier. We
Yep.
connected on Instagram, and I mean, I have to admit, I was looking at your Instagram story today, and you're just
Yep.
cooking it with that quinoa bowl with egg whites and avocados.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I think this is something that can probably apply to anyone who's tuning in and listening to this episode. Is not only people at a high professional athlete level, but just in general. Like we have an obesity epidemic. We have people who are not eating right. But let's start with just kind of how nutrition became a part of your life through sports, and then maybe we can go from there in general advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So nutrition started, big for me when I would say it was probably 2012. I unfortunately I had hip and shoulder surgery a week apart, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna be the athlete that has two surgeries and is inactive for 9 months and gets overweight and this and that. So that's when I really started implementing a better diet, because I
Mhm.
wasn't able to train as much. My diet then is nowhere near to where it is now. And again, it took time to develop and understand and learn and grow. But that was kind of the real, trigger for me was, hey, I'm having two surgeries. I'm a professional athlete. You need to make the adjustment. I wasn't eating bad at the time, but I certainly wasn't eating like I should. So.
Got it. And where do you fall on the spectrum in terms of like what you think kind of an optimal diet would look like? Because there's obviously all these fads and different things out there. Some people are vegetarian, vegan, paleo,
Of course.
whole foods, like low. So what would you say is kind of the optimal diet?
For me, I would probably say I'm a combination of like paleo, keto, and vegan. I mean, I eat really all that stuff. One of the biggest things that I don't eat is processed foods. That is something I'm big against. Recently, I haven't been consuming any dairy. The only dairy I did consume was like organic cottage cheese and organic Greek yogurt for the probiotics and protein content in it. But I've recently just taken that out just to kind of see how my body reacts. But yeah, I would say that's kind of where my diet is right now. I stick to healthy carbs such as quinoa, yams, a little bit of brown rice, not much. And then protein is just fish, chicken. I'll have some grass-fed beef twice a month. Yeah, and then just fruits and vegetables.
I love that. I love how you say no processed food because that's kind of the crux of the problem in our country in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
But you're also not. Sounds like you're not this intense perfectionist that can kind of set you up for failure where it's like no red meat ever. Like if you want a steak once a month,
100%. Yeah. Well, people, people see my Instagram stuff and, they're always asking me like, oh, your diet, you're this, you're that. It's so hard when really it's not, for me, it's not hard. I understand someone making the change, why initially it would be hard, but
yeah.
I don't count anything. I don't weigh anything.
Mhm.
I eat when I'm hungry. And I stop when I'm not hungry. And I just know, what foods I can eat. and I have a general idea of the portion size, and that's really it. I really stay away from processed stuff. I read the ingredients on back of anything that's packaged just to see what's in there.
Yeah.
And just a general rule of thumb for everyone: if you can't read an ingredient, you probably shouldn't buy that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of really the biggest thing for me, is just keeping things simple.
Yeah.
Simple, simple, simple. And I understand cooking and all that stuff is hard during the week, but meal prepping and all that can help.
Totally. I just want to share two funny things that I read. One is the language test, which is if the food is the same word in every language, like Doritos, Big Mac, if it's the same thing,
Right.
don't eat it.
Don't eat it. That's
And then,
funny. I actually haven't heard that one. That's funny.
yeah, like Dunkaroo, Oreo.
Right.
And then the other one was the grandma test. Like if you told your grandma you were going to be eating this, and she's like, "You're eating what?" and she's never heard of
Yeah.
it, like she'll know what a steak, she'll know what a salad is.
Right. Exactly. No, that's so true. Yeah, that's so true. That's funny. I've never heard of this.
Yeah. I think I got those from Michael Pollan. He wrote this book about he calls it the food rules, and he says he's got 3 rules. One is eat real food as opposed to processed, not too much, meaning portion size, and
Yep.
then mostly plants or lean protein.
Yep.
Kind of.
Yep. Plants and lean protein is huge. And just touch on a quick one. If you're having a lot of chicken and not enough fish, you're going to have a lot higher omega-6 in your body versus omega-3. Omega-6 leads to inflammation or has been known to cause inflammation. So anyone out there listening and you eat a lot of chicken, just supplement with either fish or fish oil pills.
Yeah, no, that's I've never heard that, so thank you, and that's also really useful for me because I can get into chicken. Now, the meal prep thing, I just want to ask you about, because again, I see you crushing it on Instagram with these, and the food looks so good too. It's not like what you're eating looks genuinely delicious and healthy. But even myself, like I'm looking at what you had for breakfast this morning, and I'm feeling overwhelmed with all the work that I got to do on my business. And like I had a protein bar and I had some vegetables and stuff this morning, but like any advice on how to, because once you get into the habit, like you have a routine now where you probably go to Whole Foods or you go wherever, and this is your life. So it's easy for you now. But for someone who wants to break into and cultivate this type of pattern and lifestyle, how would you recommend they get started onto this path?
Yeah. So for me, the toughest things, I guess the toughest part about cooking is how long it takes. So if you can minimize the stuff that takes the longest, that's best. So for example, quinoa, great for you. Sweet potatoes, great for you, but they take so long to cook. So if you can cook those in bulk and then just, package those or whatever, and then, it's not hard to make 2 eggs in the morning, right? 2 eggs and an avocado with some salsa is like excellent, in addition with the quinoa or the sweet potatoes. So that's really the biggest thing that I do is, I will make some eggs. Probably after this, I'll throw a couple of eggs on the grill and then I'll just get some quinoa that I have in my fridge and dump it on the plate and I'm good to go. So that's really an easy, simple way to kind of get started with the meal prepping process.
Right.
Start small, get big. So simplify the quinoa and the sweet potato cooking and build from there.
Got it. That's you're just like blowing my mind right now. I'm like, I could do that too.
Yeah. And the quinoa, it's super easy. You just throw it in a big old pan and it's 2-to-1 ratio. So if you get, if you have a thing that's 4 cups of quinoa, 8 cups of water, and that'll last you a long time. So, and you just put it in little bowls, package it and throw it in the fridge and you kind of have that to go as needed.
Got it. Yeah, no, that's again so helpful. Now I want to ask you about portion control, especially as someone who is a former professional athlete who is probably burning a ridiculous amount of calories.
Yeah.
It's like you look at Michael Phelps and he's eating like 4 hamburgers for lunch, and I've met a good amount of professional athletes. Like I used to work at the Yankees and the NFL, and you see a lot of these guys who sadly get pretty heavy. Because they're used to burning 10,000 calories a day, and they used to be able to eat whatever they want and stay skinny. So the corollary that I think opens this question up to a wider audience is, high school athletes, for example, because
For
playing
sure.
college sports is much more competitive. So you take the average guy who, let's say, played basketball and football in high school or baseball in high school, but now like maybe doesn't make the club baseball team, or maybe he's just busy with class and he puts on that freshman 15 or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I definitely did.
Yeah.
And then, or take the guy who's like athletic in college and goes to the gym a lot, but now he's in the real world working a 9 to 5
Right.
and drives to and from work, and he doesn't make it to the gym except on the weekends. How do you make that adjustment? And maybe let's start with your personal experience of going from pro athlete to like, okay, now you're probably caloric intake should be a little bit lower.
Right. So what I did, I think there's a couple different adjustments you can do. One of them, what I did when I had my surgery was I consumed better foods. I think that's huge because a lot of like those processed foods that have all these bad ingredients in it will lead to weight gain. So I think that's one of them, is cleaning up your diet, eating better foods. The second one for me, if you're going from professional athlete to now your everyday guy, or college student to now working in the real world and don't have as much time to get to the gym. I think what you can do is spread out your meals and eat more protein versus eating more carbs or more fats. I would shift my diet to consuming, if you're used to consuming one handful of protein, consume 1.5 handfuls of protein, and then deduct a half a handful from carbs, just to
Right.
keep it super simple. So again, 2 adjustments for me: either clean up the diet and the ingredients, or consume more protein and smaller meals throughout the day.
Yes, I've definitely heard about that, and I'd love to just also talk a little bit about training in the gym. The nutrition is obviously important, but
Yep.
you are a trainer. I also want to spend a bunch of time talking about your 365 Sports Academy. So maybe this is a
Yep.
good transition. But maybe before we dive into what that exactly is, um, what's your training regimen like, and what would you recommend if someone, I mean, obviously you're coaching athletes, but just kind of the average guy or girl out there listening, like how often should they be going to the gym? What should they be doing? Like, what do you see versus what you recommend?
Yeah, I guess it all depends on someone's schedule. I would certainly say, maybe 4 times a week is a good schedule. I'm right now probably on 5 or sometimes 6 days a week, just depending on when I can get in.
Yeah.
And for example, on my training, Mondays is an upper body workout, Tuesdays is a lower body workout, Wednesdays is kind of like a cardio/circuit day to kind of get moving and flush out the muscles and all the lactic acid in the muscles.
Yeah.
Thursday is like an off day, and then Friday is an upper pull. Saturday is like another circuit. Sunday's off. So, but if I'm feeling good, I'll work out that Thursday. For an everyday person, I'd probably say, get in the gym on a Monday, and I would go with like an upper body workout. That's always like, the workout that guys like is the upper body. So start that off in the week. Start out hot, throw some weight around. Tuesday, have a nice off day. Wednesday, go with a lower body workout. Thursday off. Friday, another workout, and then Saturday as well if you want. But I think if you go hard enough in the gym, you really only need 3 to 4 days.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's the other end of the spectrum is there's some people out there who try to get into the gym twice a day and they're killing themselves and they're overdoing
Too
it.
much. It's too much. I think, and this is what I tell my athletes, a training program and working out and this and that is great, but you also need to have that rest period. So, and I wouldn't even, some people say, oh, a 1 hour workout is great, is, perfect, or my workout should take an hour and a half, when it's like, really doesn't need to take that. As long as you hit everything, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how long it takes. And what I honestly recommend to people is try and get in and out of the gym as fast as possible. So if you have on there, a ton of different upper body workouts, knock those out. Don't spend a couple minutes in between each set. Spend 30 seconds to a minute in between each set and knock those out. So, I mean, and you'll see not only will you see greater gains, but you also get in and out of the gym. You'll be efficient with your time.
Yeah. Do you believe in supersetting and going from one exercise to the other within the same circuit?
Yeah, I do. So for example, what I did yesterday, I did a warm up with clap push-ups. I think
Nice.
it was 6 sets of 3, and then I went into dumbbell pressing. So whenever I do like a heavy main lift, such as dumbbell pressing or back squatting or deadlifting, that's all I do for that particular set. I focus on that, and I'll rest a little bit more. So maybe I'll take a minute to rest in between each set. Sometimes a little more if I'm maxing out.
Right.
But yesterday I did 4 sets of 5 on dumbbell press.
Yeah.
And then I went on to dumbbell row, and I superset it with band pull aparts.
Nice.
And then I rested a minute. So I do incorporate supersetting into my program. But again, whenever I'm doing a heavy main lift, I just focus on that.
Yeah. Nice. Do you have like a 1 rep max, either like bench, squat, or deadlift that you're like really proud of? Like one of those 3?
Yeah, so I hit last week I did 430 on deadlifts. And that was the first time I really kind of maxed out on deadlifts. Yeah, and that's good. I weigh 200 pounds, so 2 to 1, anything above 2 to 1 on a deadlift is good. Certainly working on bringing that up a little bit, but I do so many different exercises, so yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's a lot of 45s on each side.
I know, it's stacking it up. Yeah, it's like how many is it? It's 4 of them, and then plus a little more. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's sick, man.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk about 365 Sports Academy. I want to hear all about it, and I think it's really inspiring, especially because there are a lot of pro athletes who kind of transition and they don't know where to go. So let's start with the story of how you went from baseball to this.
Yeah, so I got involved with another guy and like another academy right out of pro ball when I was going back to school, and I just started training athletes. I trained some friends or some family friends. I had trained some guys that I knew were interested in training, and I was just doing it kind of here or there, and then all of a sudden all this word of mouth started going on. I started getting clients all over the place. So that's really how I initially got started training athletes. I then went on to start my own travel ball organization. I had 3 teams. I was training all kinds of athletes. My schedule was crazy. So unfortunately, I went away from the teams, and then I strictly went into the player development side.
Right.
And that's really how I got started. It wasn't really a plan once I finished college, but like I said, after I finished pro ball, I had 2 years of college and 2 years of training athletes. And
Right.
then when I finished college, I was like, okay, well, I'm doing well. I don't need to go search for a 9 to 5. Let's focus on building this business.
Yeah. Lots to talk about there as someone who also doesn't have a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And the pros and cons. But so kind of what's your target? If someone's listening right now and might be interested in what you offer, like who's your target client? Like what's their age, assuming they're a baseball player? Like who do you focus on coaching, training?
So I train a wide variety of athletes, anywhere from 10 years old to 25 years old in baseball. And then after that, it's anywhere from 15 to like 40. Any of my training clients that I take to a gym, or I go to their house, or any of them that I train remotely via Skype or FaceTime. So that's really my target. Those are the athletes I train.
Yeah, cool. And what's your experience been like doing this? Because I'm sure you've probably encountered a lot of different personalities. And now once you start accepting money from people and providing services, that's kind of its own world. And, something you probably didn't think about when you were playing sports. And so, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs listening. So kind of what's that experience been like for you?
Like the experience of training guys and like training different, the experience training different or people with different like approaches, or
Well, no, I meant more kind of like dealing with different personalities and what it's like to just actually run a business and, think about, once you start accepting, people start paying you for stuff, then expectations come in, emotions can come up.
Yeah, for sure. And I think something that I deal with a lot is, I deal with a lot of different athletes who, some are younger and not as motivated, but they're there for their parents.
Right.
Versus some guys who are high school, college, and pro guys where they're there for them and they're getting after it, where they have higher expectations.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of it too for me is for my younger athletes parents, is them understanding that this game is like a process and they're not going to see results right away. And if their son goes 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts, it's not because they suck,
Yeah.
or not because I suck. It's part of the game, you know?
Yes.
And then I'll, going to my personal training clients and my remote clients, about seeing results and all that stuff. Again, that takes time, and
Yep.
I think it kind of goes back to discipline and being patient and understanding that, results aren't going to happen right away. You're building a pyramid. You have to, start here and be in it for the long haul. You're
Yes.
not going to see long-term progress or great results, in 1 month time, but, put together, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, then see where you're at. Have a good, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, and then assess. And then if you're not seeing something, then okay, let's make a change.
Yep.
But I think that's kind of the problem, with some of my clients today, is that they want everything now,
Yeah.
especially with social media. And I just try to bring them down to earth and say, hey guys, like, this is going to take time. It's there's a reason why not everyone can be a professional athlete. There's a reason why, not everyone, is whatever super fit or whatever. It's because it takes time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. This instant gratification world we live in, where
Especially with
someone,
social media.
yeah, totally. I mean, I coach people in business and different areas of their life too. And someone will come to me 200 pounds overweight and I'll put them on a new plan, new food. And they're like, Brendan, I gained 1 pound this week. Like, what's going on? And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
sometimes, your body has to adjust to these new things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, exactly. It's like, did you go to the bathroom like this morning? Like, you could be holding extra weight, something
yeah,
like that. So
I mean, I could tell them to not drink water for 3 days and they'll lose 5 pounds, but they also might die. And
yeah, exactly. And actually, one of my clients who's a woman, I train her and her husband. She lives in Newport Beach, and she's very in tune with her body and how she looks and feels, and she looks great. But she, the other day she was mentioning how, she's like, oh, I gained, like, I'm up a pound. I don't know what's going on. And then I was just like, well, what did you eat the last couple of days? Like, what did
yeah,
you eat today? Because
yeah,
that all vary. And then I told her, I was like, hey, don't be so concerned about like what the scale looks like.
yeah,
How do you look? How do you feel? Most importantly, how do you feel? You
yes,
know, I don't, I don't eat this healthy and I don't train this much because like I want to look a certain way. I do it because I feel great, because I can work 12, 14, 16-hour days and, kill myself for my business,
yeah,
and I can do it consistently. I have like those good quality nutrients to fuel my body. And, I don't, my goal isn't to have some shredded six pack. It's just a result of, what I do in my training program. That's really it.
I can resonate with that so much, because as someone who kind of grew up in this Americanized, like very Western lifestyle and experience, I went to college, I would go to parties, be hungover.
Yeah. Yep.
And I mean, now it's like, I look at a beer and I'm like, first of all, I know what that's going to do to my body. And it's not even
Yeah.
about calories. It's about the fact that if I just pound a water and an herbal tea and I go to bed early, I'm going to crush it tomorrow and I'm going to
No
feel good
doubt.
all day. And
No doubt.
I see people who are like, they're sick all the time. And half the time it's because they're eating all this processed food and all the chemicals going through their body.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and that's like why I love what I do, is because when you get someone who, is doing those things and you make that adjustment, they're just like, wow, how much better they feel,
Mm-hmm.
is huge. And I mean, that's going to translate to, future success in their personal life, their business life. I mean, there's so many benefits to those things. So yeah, it's huge. And that's why I love what I do. I love seeing just the progress with people when they put in the work and they get the results that they want, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Awesome. Do you have like a favorite success story of someone you've worked with? Made a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. So, one of my guys, his name's Josh. He came to me after his junior year of high school. His father was telling me how, he had a full ride scholarship to USC for baseball, but he needed, tremendous work in the outfield. And I'll never forget, the first day I worked with him, hitting fly balls and I mean, he had trouble like catching certain fly balls, like just, I mean, and the guy's a top prospect. He's on full ride scholarship to USC, and he had trouble catching basic fly balls.
Yeah.
And I remember calling my brother after, and I was like, because my brother was a professional outfielder as well. And I was like, dude, I just worked with this guy, Josh. He's going to USC. I was like, I don't know how he's going to USC. He can't catch a ball that's over his head. He turns over the wrong shoulder. He runs the wrong route, blah, blah, blah. So I worked with Josh consistently from that summer, his junior year, until his senior year of high school. And a testament to Josh, I mean, this kid works his tail off. And, he wasn't a bad outfielder because he was a bad athlete. He was just a bad outfielder at the time because he didn't have the right footwork down. He wasn't getting great reads. He wasn't running great routes. So there was so much potential there for him, once he got those things cleaned up. Yeah. And, going back to kind of his future, he was drafted by the Philadelphia Phillies and signed a pretty big contract. And he's currently playing professional baseball for the Phillies organization.
Wow.
Yeah. So for me, but again, kind of going back to what we talked about earlier about, discipline and work ethic and stuff like that. I mean, this guy is the epitome of that. And I still train him to this day. So I still train him. He was drafted in 2016. I was training him in 2015. I still train him to this day. So I train him every off season. Yep.
That's really impressive. Congrats on what you were able to do for him.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny thinking back on that. Just like, man, like Josh, I'll even tell him, he doesn't care. I'll even tell him like, dude, remember when like you had trouble catching a fly ball like over your head? Like,
yeah. No, but that demonstrates a lot of hope for someone who might be struggling in something that kind of seems so basic and obvious of like what can be overcome.
Right. And I've just kind of going back because, some people like, personal trainers or sport trainers, like they get like a bad, some of them get a bad rap or they're, like, oh, do you really need that? Or, oh, what's the value in that? But I think, for me more specifically is I can see, what he's doing wrong. He wasn't missing fly balls because of his speed. He wasn't missing fly balls because he was a bad athlete. It was just simply because he had poor footwork, poor reads, poor routes.
Mm-hmm.
And actually I'm working with I'm starting to work with a new athlete next week who just came to me yesterday or phone call yesterday. Kind of the same issues that Josh had back then. And this guy's committed to the University of Washington and he's trying to be a pro prospect as well. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what's going on with him. Apparently he's a big prospect, but again, has issues in the outfield. So it'll be interesting to see him next week.
Yeah, no, I'm curious to hear how that plays out and what's going on with him. And I also just want to kind of really strongly reiterate, especially to our listeners out there, the importance and power of getting a trainer or someone like you, Jordan, to help out. Because just from my own personal workout routines, like not pro, of course, but just kind of to stay in shape and be fit, I graduated college and I felt like I had a pretty good workout routine and I'd read a lot of books about working out and fitness and, the Marky Ripito stuff of like the perfect form. So I thought I was doing pretty well. And then, I got paid a small bonus in my first job and I was like, what money best spent is on your own health and wellness. And
for sure.
I bought like a 20 pack of training sessions from the Equinox gym here in New York City. And nice. I became good friends with this personal trainer. And I mean, he just took me, I thought I was like 8 out of 10 in terms of knowledge. I was really like 2 out of 10, which I knew a good amount, which means most people are probably even lower. And I just spent so much time with him. And like, he just taught me so much, mostly about like fundamentals and posture and how to avoid injury, like, especially when 100%. You're talking with weightlifting stuff. So.
100%. Yeah. And, a lot of, you can make tremendous progress in the gym if you start incorporating like some of the Olympic lifting stuff.
Yeah.
But again, kind of going back to what you said about posture and form and technique, that stuff requires a lot of, time, posture, technique, stuff like that. But you can see tremendous gains in your, body and growth if you incorporate that into your program for sure. But those take time. There are some lower level exercises that mimic those Olympic liftings that you can still incorporate if you're kind of on a novice level.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was really impatient, and my trainer Geppetto was like, "All right, we're gonna spend like the next 4 sessions just doing like air squats to get the right form down."
Get the
And I was
yep.
like, "I don't want to squat air. I want to squat, 3 plates."
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I wanna lift, I wanna toss some heavy weight around. Come on.
yeah, and he's like, "Sure, you can, but you won't be able to walk on your knees in 10 years."
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, that's great. I mean, I think, and for me, I back squat, I front squat, I deadlift, I do all those Olympic lifting stuff. But it took me time to really get that down. And even some days my form and technique isn't perfect. No
Yeah,
one's perfect every day.
yeah,
So I think it's just about, getting in the gym and doing some different exercises to kind of strengthen and get yourself ready for those Olympic lifts. and, and,
yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with starting with just the bar and working on form and technique. I mean, every time I warm up with the bar.
yeah.
I make sure my body is moving correctly and I'm feeling good. Seeing if my hips tight, low back's tight, whatever it is, just and making adjustments.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, well, I'd love to dive into just a quick rapid round and then get ready to wrap up.
Let's do it.
All right, number one, favorite baseball player of all time.
Favorite baseball player of all time? Oh my gosh, that is the toughest question. Favorite baseball player of all time? Mariano Rivera. Guy's
Nice,
nasty.
Yankees.
Yeah.
The best advice someone has ever given you.
Best advice someone has ever given me: trust the process.
Mm,
So Tripp, trust the process, that everything isn't going to come to you right away, that you're not going to see results right away, but just trusting that everything you're doing each day is going to get you to your long-term goal.
yes, absolutely. Favorite book you've ever read.
Favorite book I ever read was gosh, they made a movie out of it, Lone Survivor. Did you ever see that
Oh,
one?
I read that book.
Yeah. I read that book. I read the book actually when I was playing in the Northeast. Lone Survivor. They made a movie about it with Mark Wahlberg.
Mark Wahlberg.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I read that book during one of my professional baseball seasons, and man, I'll never forget. We'd be traveling somewhere to another city, and I would literally not put that book down until 2 a.m. It was awesome. And then they came out with a movie a couple years later, so it was cool.
Yes, I read that. I mean, the first like third of that book goes through the Navy SEAL training process.
Yeah, exactly. Goes through the training, and I think what I most liked about that book was how I was able to paint like a picture of what was going on. I think that's why I enjoyed it so much. Is because I
Mhm.
could almost like visualize what was going on. It was
Yeah,
such a well written book.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, what's your go-to pump up song when you're in the gym?
Go to pump up song. Oh man, my go to pump up song. Let's see. I know I have one right here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's called. It's this one right here. It's called Dubai. Let's see. Am I allowed to cuss on here?
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
So the one I like right now, for whatever reason, maybe it's the beat or something, but it's by the favorite pump up song today is Huncho Jack Dubai shit. I don't know why, I just like it. It's a good, like, got a good little beat.
Huncho Jack, what's the song?
It's called Dubai shit.
Dubai shit. All right,
Yeah,
I am gonna listen to that and probably work out to that later today.
yeah. Check it out. It's funny. It's good
Uh,
stuff.
cool, cool. Well, so thanks so much for coming on. This has been a blast, and I'm really
Yeah.
excited to keep in touch. Where can people find you? Like, what's your website, your Instagram handle?
Yeah. So my website is 365sportsacademy.com. And my Instagram handle is _Jordan Tripp _. So yeah, this has been fun. Thanks for having me on.